In this video, we're going to take a look at using what we call the structure analyzer. The structure analyzer is designed to help when you've got a situation where you have pre-existing content built on a specific model and you go and change the names of objects within that model, whether it's a dimension name / table name or a column name or even the name of a measure. When you make changes to the underlying model itself, it will impact all the reports that are built on that model. So you need to have a way of being able to very quickly, if you're going to make a change to the model, you can, number one, see what the implications of that change are going to be, but then also make those changes at one time instead of having to open up every single piece of content and make the change individually. So that's what we're going to look at. We've got a dashboard here that's got some content that's using a slicer here for dates. And this dashboard happens to have 3 pages to it. All 3 pages are using this date slicer. And so we're going to see what happens when you make changes to the names of objects and how Pyramid responds. So what we're going to do is I've got this model here, and we are essentially going to rename the date dimension. So you'll see right now the date dimension is called sales date. What I'm going to do is I'm going to rename this. Just so that it's kind of simple for me to rename it and then change it back if I need to, I'm going to use this rename columns option. And we're going to come in here, and instead of this being called sales date, we're going to call this my date. And then we're going to hook that up to the time intelligence node. And you'll see the time intelligence node is going to leverage the my date. One thing to be aware of when you're dealing with time intelligence and you're renaming objects, the time intelligence creates a whole series of columns on the end of your data, and it also creates hierarchies. So what you'll see is if I flip over to the data model tab and go to the hierarchies, what you'll see is the hierarchy names themselves did not change. Okay, so if I'm renaming something like a date and I would like those hierarchies to also change, I can either just manually delete the time intelligence and then re-add it, and then it'll give the hierarchies the appropriate name. Or what you can do is after the fact, you can always come back in here and rename these things. So I could just rename that my date hierarchy and my date week hierarchy. So I can just manually rename them, or I could programmatically rename them by dropping that object and re-adding it. Sorry. So we've got the name change. I'm just going to go ahead and save this. We're going to reprocess it. And once the processing is done, we're going to verify these changes. So if we go to our sales detail, go to our hierarchies, you'll see there's my date hierarchy, and it's got all the pieces and parts that I would expect. If I look in the time intelligence, you'll see instead of them all being called sales date, it says my date. Okay, so that's what has been changed. We've renamed that. So let's see what happens to the dashboard when those objects get renamed. So all I'm going to do is rerun this dashboard, and you're going to see this drop down fails because that object has been changed. You'll also see this report down below has failed as well because it's looking for a hierarchy called sales date hierarchy. That no longer exists. If I go to the next page, same thing. We've got failure on the slicer, failure on the report, and then the last page, we get failure on the slicer. So the way that you fix that is you could obviously go into each report and fix them individually, but there's actually a faster way to do this. The way that we do this is using the structure analyzer. You'll find the structure analyzer off of what's called the action panel. That's this little icon here that brings up the action panel. Along that action panel, you'll see this object here called Structure Analyzer. You can also get to it from the right-click menus. You'll find Analyze Structure as the option there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run that. I can run it for a specific object, or if I know that I'm going to have a lot of things that need to be changed, I can in fact run it from a folder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the name changes folder and say I want to run analyze structure against the entire folder. And what you'll see is it's telling me down below that there are problems with 3 pieces of content: the dashboard, report 2, and report 3. So what this will do is walk you through fixing the problem. So right now it's saying I'm looking for this thing called sales date hierarchy. What is the alternative? So I'm going to go find it. The alternative, and I need to hit refresh there. The alternative is something called my date hierarchy. So I'm just going to apply that. And then it's looking for sales date year, and that's going to be here. So it's now called my date year, and I'm going to apply that. And then we've got levels that it wants to fix. So it's wanting to know which level is the same level in this hierarchy. So I think we're going to make an assumption that this one is wanting to fix the month level. So I will grab the months and we'll hit apply. And hopefully that was the right one. And now it says all issues have been fixed. So if we just go view this now, what we should see is now everything is back up and running correctly. So that's running well. If we go to the next page, looks like was actually wanting the quarter for that particular one, but that's all right. We're now seeing the 12 months of the selected year. But now everything is back up and running as it normally would be. I did not have to go to all 3 of those reports and make changes. I was able to do it once. And the renaming changes apply not only to attributes, but to measures as well. So I could come over here and say, I've got this column called sales. I'm going to rename it to sales amount. And then when I come back over here to the data model side, we'll see our measure is sales amount. If I go ahead and save that and reprocess it, we're going to have the same problem that we did before, where if there is, and we'll just view this, if there is a measure that was using sales, and I take that back. Looks like the measures themselves, it was able to handle that change automatically. But the attribute or dimension tables, those would have to use the structure analyzer. So if we just verify, we can come back here, run it on the entire thing, and it says, hey, we didn't find any issues. So that measure rename, you'll see I actually had 2 formulas, profit and margin percent. Both of them were based off of that sales amount formula, but they were still able to operate correctly, even though I renamed it. But if you rename anything up here under the dimensions or the attributes, you will have to run Structure Analyzer. So hopefully that helps.